This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up on this week's programme, the gender pay gap in Cyprus is increasing. We discuss why it is that women get paid less than men for the same work.
As long as we go to interviews as women and we've been asked, are you single? Are you married? Are you having kids? Are you planning to have kids? While the men, they don't get asked the same questions, then we will always have this issue. And there will always be a gender pay gap.
And despite reports in the local press, those processionary caterpillars that are out and about at this time of year may make trees look as if they're dead, but in fact they're not.
When we have heavy infestation, the majority of the plants lose all the needles, all the leaves of the pine host, and look like they're dead, but it's not dead.
The Cyprus Federation of Business and Professional Women, that's BPW Cyprus, has said it's deeply concerned over the recent increase in the gender pay gap in Cyprus. That's according to the latest Eurostat data. We're joined by BPW's Secretary of the Board, Anna Kyprianou. Anna, we've always known there's a gender pay gap. But I had thought that particularly with the things that the EU had been doing over the last few years, it was coming down. Why is it going up again?
Well, to start from the beginning, there was always the pay gap, but it wasn't always so recognizable, let's say, because women didn't really argue about it for a lot of years. So recently we saw that with all the EU measures and what the countries are fighting for and with their governments and all that, we've seen actually the pay gap going down. But of course now it's going a bit up again. I believe it's because we have more figures and we have more women talking about it and they feel safe to talk about.
It's 12.2%. Now that's a lot of difference for somebody who's doing the same job as a man. And I have a very difficult job understanding how a company can pay two people a different wage for doing the same job. Sometimes, of course, the job isn't quite the same, so that's a little bit different. But if you're doing the same job, how can they justify there being a difference? Or do they not say anything about it and people don't actually know?
Well, it's a huge question mark here, but what we understood as BPW, we were having the same questions. So we decided in 2023 to have a huge market research, not only about the quantity, but a quality one. So we asked women, and we went also to the managers and we asked the managers as well a lot of questions about the equal pay and why is that and why they don't pay the same or if they do and all of that. What we came across, basically it goes to the social issue. As long as we go to interviews as women and we've been asked, are you single? Are you married? Are you having kids? Are you planning to have kids? While the men, they don't get asked the same questions, then we will always have this issue. And there will always be a gender pay gap.
Now, stop there, because I can understand an employer being a little bit cagey, if you like, about employing a younger woman who's just got married and presumably wants to start a family and will then be taking maternal leave. But that shouldn't affect her salary per se when she's there.
Exactly. I know what you mean, but I'm not really sure about why. I think it's a culture issue, to be honest, and it's more like in the heads of the managers. We've seen that everything is going better, at least. I mean, we've seen a lot of advantages from like 30 years ago. Of course, it's really slow, and we're trying now to figure out why they're still doing that. What we managed to see is we need actually more facilities. So the managers will feel safe, the CEOs will feel safe. It's the same with a woman or with a man. Or maybe the change will come from men. If you see a man taking his kid from school because it's sick, and the practice will start being this, of course, everything will start to change.
We're a patriarchal society. That's going to take centuries, it seems to me, looking at the way things are in Cyprus. So that isn't an answer. Is there anything legally that obliges companies to pay the same regardless of gender?
Yes, of course there is.
So how do they get away with not doing it?
It's not about the legislation. It's about, we see the difference in the public sector and the private sector. The public sector is more or less equal now. They're not so big, the difference in the gap.
More or less equal is not the same as equal.
Exactly.
But you just said that it is the law.
The law, we have it. It's there.
So even the government is breaking the law by not paying women the same as men?
No, it's not. The government is not doing that. The government is following the law, so we see the gap not being, I don't know if it's zero because we don't have that statistic. But
we need that statistic, don't we?
We need it, but we have to force the government to do it because, the public sector in Cyprus is huge. So in order to do this, you need to go to the government and say, we need this figure. Give us this figure. Or the EU. But the EU, of course, with the Eurostat, they are doing really huge research, but they do it both they take semi. I don't know how these researchers work and how they get these percentages. I don't have the exact figures about how many people they interview and from which sectors. But I can tell you that only Luxembourg has managed to have equal pay. All the other countries in the EU, they struggle with this. And of course, it's not, we're all trying to take it to zero and be like Luxembourg, but we need a huge culture change in our brains first, and then, again, the equality will come from the private sector.
There must be a way of monitoring this without taking up huge amounts of time for people doing surveys. And I'm thinking, isn't it possible for the tax department, for example, to be obliged to share information about wages within a specific company with possibly a commission? Why we have a gender equality commission? What are they doing? Surely they should have access to these figures to be able to do something about it.
Well, they do have to some fixtures. I'm not sure if they have to all fixtures. But again, it's not about only the statistics. The surveys will give you a number, but it's not the number that you should look at. You should look at the reason behind this number. And if we take the numbers, we see that in younger generations and in younger ages, the equal pay is almost going down even to 4.4 at ages under 25. In my ages, let's say, which is I'm 34, so it's like almost 9%. So we see it getting lower and lower every time. But again, we need more effort from all of the stakeholders in this gender issue to help and limit it.
So what would the Federation of Business Professional Women in Cyprus like female employees to do? Is there anything you can ask them to do?
To ask for what they believe they should get. We see men asking about raises, about promotions. They are feeling that I'm doing this job, I need a raise, I need a promotion, I need to get more money, and blah, blah, blah. Women tend not to do that. And what we ask women is to get out there, feel confident, and ask for what they should be earning.
Isn't that a little bit dangerous if they're working for a company where the boss is likely to say, well, if you don't like it, go somewhere else? Especially now when it's so difficult to find employment.
Yes, this is what we see, but Let me share with you something. I was having a discussion at a table with my cousins, different ages. Four of us, the same ages, more or less. We had two younger ones. And we were talking about how much time we spend at work, how much do we get paid, we feel underpaid, and all of that. And different sectors, okay? So it's not about the sector that you're in. And the younger one, she was listening to us and she was like, guys, what are you talking about? I was like, what do you mean? You don't stay at work more? And she was like, they pay me for 8 hours and this is what am I going to do? After 8 hours are done, I'm just getting out of there. I was like, how are you able to do that? If I do that in my company, let's say I will feel like, maybe I'm not doing something right. Maybe I will feel bad myself. She was like, no, I don't feel bad because if that employer doesn't want me, for sure someone else will appreciate my talents. And I was like, okay, I see a different perspective there. And I see women and men actually, they're more or less equal at that age. I'm like, okay, so we need more confidence maybe.
So have we got used to the fact, particularly here, when a lot of businesses are quite small businesses, you know the boss, he asks you to do a favour and stay on a bit later or whatever, and you do it. Mm-hmm. You don't say, well, that's going to cost you overtime.
Yes.
Is that the problem then?
It's not about the overtime. It's about the mentality. I mean, it's okay to stay at work more, and I mean, of course, if it makes you happy.
Do your emails at the weekends?
Yeah, if it makes you happy, do it. But, I mean, have the courtesy to know what you're doing. Have the feeling to see that if you're doing an extra job or if you are not, or if you are getting paid for what you're doing. If you're getting paid and you feel okay with yourself, like my boss is paying me and is paying me a lot of money and he or she is really thoughtful and gives me extra benefits, or with my kids, they help me, or they have facilities that they offer a lot of things. And what we've seen from the market research, actually, a good result was that women didn't really care about the salary they're getting. They were more thoughtful about the facilities or how many benefits the employer would give them.
Or I presume, if I interrupt you for a moment, how flexible bosses are. Because you mentioned you got kids, you get a call from the school, they're ill, you have to go and pick them up. You actually need a boss, don't you, who will say, okay, off you go, but you need to put in an extra couple of hours when the child's better. There's a deal making to be done.
Well, it's not always like that. I've seen employees saying, of course, your kids are above everything, or even your parents, you should go take care of them, don't worry about the job. And everything is going to be done, so it's okay. I had a boss, if I can say that she said to me, she was a woman, of course, so I'm not sure if that makes a difference. And I was struggling, and she was like, don't worry about the job now. Don't even think about it. Just go and do what you have to do, put your effort on it, and then it's okay whenever you feel comfortable. No questions asked, nothing. So this is the approach actually everyone needs now.
It's work-life balance, and it's an understanding from management, isn't it? That we all have to juggle that somehow.
Yes, we see now that trend, that is the work-life balance is really out there, and a lot of employees are, and the managers and all of them are getting comfortable with it, and they start searching for it. We've seen them going to seminars about how to handle this. So we see a light there, and what we need now is actually to bring them to a point where they give the facilities as well.
Middle management in Cyprus, as far as I'm concerned, is notoriously unfavourable to these sort of things we've been talking about. Is that changing? Are you aware from your members that they're beginning to think more about that work-life balance and looking after their staff? I've always said that a simple thank you for a job well done is a huge tick for people saying, I like where I'm working, I'm not going anywhere, I want to keep my job.
Well, now we have Strong women, they tend to talk, and if there isn't this work-life balance, they will speak about it. They will talk to their managers and they will say, you know what, we need to sort this out, and I need my time, you need your time, so we need this company to fly. So, I mean, we all work for the same thing. So let's sit down and talk about it and we'll find a solution. And most of the times it's working out, because as women, we learn that talks and discussions are always able to guide you somewhere good.
Let me finish by asking you about the effect that all of this has, for example, on pensions for women. Because the other thing, of course, is they take time off to have babies or maternal leave. I know it's got better with an increase in paternal leave. But what effect does all of this have when a woman comes to the end of her working life and she's much worse off, isn't she, than her male counterpart?
I see now from my parents, from my uncles and aunts, and I mean, everyone are almost, or they are already there at their pension years. And you cannot imagine what I see. I see women not being able to survive without their husbands because they're not getting paid enough from their pension. And now they actually starting to realize what this pay gap means, because you see that your pension is like they're earning almost 1/3 of what their husband is earning from the pension. So it's really horrible, actually, and I'm having a really bad time in accepting this. I cannot accept it. I'm like, I don't want, when I'm at my pension years, to depend on anyone because I was getting paid less when I was in my working years.
Very, very quickly now, we have to wrap this up. What do you hope can be done about this? Is this got to come from the government down, or has it got to come from working women up?
I think the government needs to work on it as well, because now what's done is done for ages from 55 and above. So the government needs to see this and actually act on it. But from the younger generations, I expect actually not only women that are workers, but also their employees and the managers to understand this and see more far that, you know, we need to pay you equally. So you need to have a good pension in your pension years. We need to see a lot front. I'm not sure if this is happening in companies. I hope they do it, but let's see. I'm not sure.
I don't know how long it'll be before we get to parity, but we've been talking to Anna Kyprianou, who's secretary of the Cyprus Federation of Business and Professional Women, talking there about the fact that Eurostat says that the pay gap between men and women has risen to 12.2%, and that's compared to 11.9% the previous year that they studied. So that really means that for every €1 earned by a man, a woman receives on average 88 cents. Anna, it's always a pleasure to talk to business people who are looking at issues like this. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me here.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
It's at this time of year that if you're out in our beautiful forests, you're quite likely to come across processionary caterpillars. We've talked about them on the programme before, but yes, they are about, and they can be dangerous because they're toxic, particularly if your dog is sniffing around in the undergrowth. So once again, having read an article in the Cyprus Mail that suggested these caterpillars killed our pine trees, and I rather recall talking last year or the year before about it and being told that generally speaking, no, they didn't do that, I thought we could get some clarification and a timely word of warning warning, perhaps. So Konstantinos Nicolaou from the Department of Forests joins us on this week's programme. Konstantinos, many thanks. First, for people who haven't heard me talking about this before, can you describe these caterpillars and what they do?
Normally, this insect is defoliator, belongs to the class Lepidoptera, and this insect is a major destructive defoliator on pine forests in Cyprus, including in Mediterranean region. The major host in Cyprus is the Calambrian pine. The Calambrian pine is everywhere in Cyprus, from the altitude of the sea until on the mountains of Troodos, about 1,300 meters on the south and east.
Tell me a little bit, if you will, about their life cycle, because I think they're called processionary because of what happens when they come down from the trees.
Normally, the adult insect, start to fly from July, about the end of July. And after, we have the mating of the male and the female insects, and after we have the eggs.
Can I just clarify? They're moths, aren't they, when they're actually
the
adults?
name is moth. The adult insect is moth.
Okay, and they lay their eggs, and then those eggs, what happens? Because when you see these in the trees, it looks like a spider's web. How does that happen?
Yes, this is the nest. Is the nest. After, when we have the hatching of the egg, slowly, the larvae develop, increase, Normally we have 5 instars. Every month about, we have 1 instar. We have 5 instar about. And slowly develop. About at the end of February, after the mid of February, all the larvae create the final nest at the upper place of the canopy of the plants,
So it's the larvae that make the nest?
Yes.
Okay, and they do that, but they also eat the pine needles, don't they? But I was under the impression that although they can make a tree look as if it's dead, if it's an adult, fully grown tree, it just looks bad, but it will come back again.
Yes, I said before, the moth is defoliator. Feed on the needles, eat the needle, consume the needles. And especially at the last instar, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th, consume more needles, And I say before, about at the end of February, when we have heavy infestation, the majority of the plants lost all the needles, all the leaves of the host, of the pine host, and look like they're dead. But it's not dead. We haven't diebacks after the infestation of the moth,
And we know, I think, that we must be careful when they are processing on the ground, because they then go and bury themselves in the ground until they come out again next year. And that's when they're dangerous because of those toxic hairs. But I want to ask you about what's happening with spraying, because I heard that the Forestry Department prefers, if possible, not to spray to get rid of these, because that can be damaging to other things as well. Can you enlighten us on that?
Yes, the suppression of the Department of Forest restrict mainly in the urban areas, recreation area, picnic site, for instance, camping site, forest park, public green, young reforestation, and young plantation. In those places, regularly, the people prefer to go for recreation, and we try to protect the people, But if you allow to me to say a few things about the allergic problem of the insect.
Well, yes, but before you do, can I just ask you about the fact that some, I think, villages are complaining that it's too expensive for them to spray. Is there any other way that these things can be controlled without that sort of expense? And of course, spraying pesticides tends to be not the best idea if we're looking after biodiversity. I mean, I don't think you do this, do you, in the Natura sites, for example?
Yes. In general, the Department of Forest use biological insecticides, And that's, if we have good timing, we have excellent results.
But they're expensive, I suppose.
Yes, it's expensive. This insecticide is a little bit expensive, but I think every village, for instance, every municipality, if they want to use more effective the insecticides, it's good to use in time.
So at a specific time of year?
Yes, the best time for the spray is from November until December, when the larves of the insect is very vulnerable.
So tell us then, if you will, before we finish, about the problem for people in terms of the reaction to these toxic hairs.
Regularly, after of the mid of January, the larves inbreed in their bodies toxic hair. And this is the reason we suppress the insect earlier during November and December. I advise to the people to avoid to contact with the larves or with the nets on the affected pine areas, especially for the dogs, for instance.
Well, it's a good thing to warn people to be careful, because we try and do this on the programme every year. A lot of newcomers don't know about this. That's the rather toxic pine caterpillar. And we've been talking to Konstantinos Nikolaou from the Department of Forests. They're trying very hard to keep a control on these bugs, but if you do come across them, particularly with pets in tow, do beware that they can have a devastating effect. Konstantinos, many thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
And now for other news. With a water shortage looming, particularly in the west of the island, Paphos and Limassol, the Water Development Department has suggested that things be simplified so that there's fast-track licensing for small private desalination plants. They're hoping that hotels will do this, but of course they haven't thought about the fact that only hotels which are right next to the sea would be able to do it. And then they haven't taken into consideration the environmental impact of desalination. Hoteliers themselves have said that it will be expensive, even if it could be done in time for this year's summer season. And it would mean they'd need to put more solar panels, also expensive, in order to run the desalination units without paying huge electricity bills. Meanwhile, we have the environmental organisations reminding that our very precious Posidonia seagrass fields off the coast of Cyprus, which are huge carbon sinks, will be damaged by the outflow of desalination plants. They also pointed out that there should have been a strategic environmental assessment and a special ecological assessment, and that the only official environmental assessment on desalination in Cyprus dates way back to September 2011 and pertains exclusively to large-scale public desalination units. So whether or not there will be an uptake by hotels which are right by the sea, and what the impact that will have on the biodiversity of those areas, remains a big question mark. And meanwhile, residents of the Paphos and Limassol districts had better prepare themselves for the possibility of water rationing this summer. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.